Well, my friends, it's that time again for our good friend, Mr. Bob Kudla, who joins us from tradewithlionel.com, tradewithlionel.com, 800-948-1408. Bob, every time we talk, I'm always reminded that I think we have some of the best conversations because, frankly, be honest with you, most financial stuff bores the living you know what out of me because it's kind of dry. You do a perfect admixture of finance, investment, but also current events, politics, the real world. So, wow us again, my friend. What's on your top of mind today, sir?
Yeah, I think we're going into a transition here. So we had uh, my personal view is that we had to blow off top here from April into August. You know, a lot of these names have gone up 100% in 6 months. And I'll give you an example. If you look at Palantir, okay, Palantir
Oh, oh
a year
yeah.
a year ago was a $20 stock, and then it hit 190. Now I love the company in terms of the its ability to generate market share and cash flow. People may disagree on, is it evil incarnate or is it a great company? But I'm going to set that aside for a second and tell you that in less than 2 weeks it went from 190 to 140, and that's how fast these high flyers are going to get blown up. And because we're unhinged from fundamentals and we're even unhinged from technical analysis. And right now it's all about what they call the derivatives. And I'd call it the Titanic effect, right? You're out there and all you do is see this little ice chunk floating on the surface, but underneath is where all the danger is. And that's the same with the market. The market's being driven by option contracts. And these things can evaporate in a minute. And once they evaporate, how it works, Lionel, and I'll get a little technical for people too, so they can
Please.
know what they're dealing with here, is that when you go ahead and you buy a call option, right? A call option is basically a leveraged bet, hoping that the stock's going to go higher than what you paid for the option. Okay, a lot of times it's like a 10-to-1 bet, and so there's somebody on the other side of that is taking that trade, and they're typically market makers, right? And what they're not in the business of making directional bets. They're in the business of being a broker. So what they do is they immediately hedge that bet by they sell the call, but then they turn around and they buy the stock. Okay. And so what they do then is they help you then accelerate that price movement. Well, once you sell that call, or if you don't renew that call, they're released from that obligation and they'll close that position. And so what you have happen is that you go from what's called a virtuous effect to a deleterious effect. And you see these moves are accelerated. That's why a lot of times you'll see, you ever hear the phrase up like an escalator, down like an elevator?
Mm-hmm.
That's why these things happen, because these market makers are no longer obligated to hedge a position. The position is gone and they just disappear, and they have no obligation to make a market. They just have an obligation to be neutral. And so we're in that situation now where we're hitting $1 trillion of notional, which means of if you add up all the bets. And then typically these bets don't work out. But the last quarter, the last 3 months, first time I think in history is that call buyers made money on their trade. Typically, if you're a buyer of options, you lose money. People don't know that. The dirty little secret of trading is that you're in the New York casino, not Vegas. And so we're in a situation now where you just can't keep putting on more and more and more what they call notional risk, and it's going to sag the market. And I told people to expect anywhere between a 15 and 20% correction between last week and basically the 15th of August to the 15th of October. Expect a pretty strong pullback. And then we'll have to wait and see. Going into the end of the year is typically a bullish period to see if that then re-engages, or if we're going to have like a 2002 event where you get basically an 18-month bear market. And a lot of it depends on how people view the Federal Reserve in September lowering rates. I think the betting markets are saying like 92%. Tomorrow, you and I were talking Thursday before Jackson Hole. I'm not sure when you're going to release this. Is that if
Today.
okay, so if he starts lowering interest rates and people believe that we're in a lowering rate environment, the market follows interest rates down. People have this weird notion is that, well, when interest rates fall, that means the economy is going to get better, and that means the stock market is going to go higher. It's already been front run. Market follows the interest rates down because they correctly observed the fact that the Fed wouldn't be lowering interest rates unless economic activity is deteriorating. And so the same thing happened when they're raising interest rates. Everybody said, oh my God, the market's going to crash. Well, no, they're raising interest rates. Typically, the Fed's behind. So the market makers, or the market influencers, I should say, are front running these moves because it's pretty easy. If I told you, I said between now and a year from now, I can pretty much guarantee you'll make 25-30% in the market, no stock market risk whatsoever, and you can go away. You would say, sign me up, coach, right? Well, that's what happens when you start lowering interest rates, is that the bond yields fall, the bond price goes up, and people will flock to that, and they'll move out of. They don't have stock market risk. They don't have individual stock risk. They know the Fed has their back. They buy the long bond. They buy TLT ETF, and you'll see a 25-30% move higher in those bond mark prices, and the market follows the other way around. So that's what I think is up in the air right now. My personal view is that we're going to get a pretty good correction once they see that he's lowering rates. I think we're going to have a correction into the end of October. I think it's already started. We had our first tremors last week. It's going to get really choppy here, and I think we're going to chop down, and then people are going to have to say, hey, we're going to run up hard into the end of the year, Christmas rally, or if he continues to lower interest rates, I think we'll see here is a move down in October, a rise into the December Fed meeting, and then we'll start falling again into the first quarter of next year. That's my personal view. Remember, Main Street and Wall Street are two different animals, and Trump is a populist. He talks a big game about the stock market, but at the end of the day, he wants his voters employed, right, happy, and most of these people don't own stocks. So you got to remember, less than 50% of the population owns stocks, but they definitely all have jobs or want jobs. And I think that's where he's going to be leaning into going into the midterm.
How is Trump doing, do you think?
Oh, he's doing great. I always bothered a little bit about it. Not so much his rhetoric, it's probably his tone. He doesn't need to say some of the things he says, but I kind of understand why he does it. He has to break through the clutter. He has to be the guy on the news. He has to dominate the news cycle. So I think he intuitively knows these things. But look, I think, if we can, let's go around the world here from a geopolitical standpoint. His end game is the Americans' total focus on China, right? For him, China is the existential threat to the United States. I think he basically eliminated Iran as a strategic threat. He now has Israel and Saudi Arabia that they can play ball now with and play catch with Iran. They won't need the Americans to the extent that they needed them in the past. I think some of those assets will move to the Western Pacific. I think he's going to cut a deal with Russia, and he's going to make a deal that Putin can't refuse. Putin, remember, he may talk a big game, but his big worry isn't Europe. His big worry is China, right? Because, he has a population that's falling by 2 or 3 million a year, and he's losing 500,000 people in a war of his future. And China is just sitting there saying, hey, we can take half this country, okay? And I think Putin's going to have to pivot to the east to defend himself. And I think Trump's going to say, hey, look, I can help you shore up your defenses. I can cut deals with you. I can make you wealthier. Why are you screwing around with Ukraine? I'll cut them off, where you guys are already at with the the Donetsk region, and which was mostly Russian speakers anyway. And we'll cut a deal with Ukraine, make them feel good about everything, and then total focus on China. Remember, China's our biggest problem. China is agitating in Brazil. China is agitating in Venezuela. China's agitating with fentanyl in Mexico. Okay, China's bringing drugs in from Canada. So it's China, 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 or as Trump would say, it's China.
Right.
So that's it. I think it's focus, and that's the last thing China wants is America 100% focused on China. I think Trump will cut a deal with Russia, and then he'll say Europe, hey, that's your problem now. You take care of Ukraine. I need strategic metals out of Russia. Russia needs markets, and I think that's kind of where we are. And so the BRICS thing is going to be Mox Nix, and from the economic standpoint, he basically defunded the Democrats, right? So USAID is gone. He's getting rid of their illegal voters, right? He's doing redistricting. He's leaving nothing to change. He's keeping these guys full court press, blitzkrieg on them. They don't know what hit them. And going into next year, there's going to probably be hundreds of indictments of people for sedition and for treason and for, you name it. And they got Bill Pulte sitting in there now and head of Fannie Mae. He's just dialing up mortgage frauds left and right. These Democrats, they're all playing fast and loose with the law, and Bill Pulte is just going to put them all up against a wall and shoot them. And so,
figuratively,
but still, they won't have money to fund elections. All that money is going to be legal defense. So so the only problem Trump has is that he needs to. The people need to see that they're getting good jobs and prices are falling. Okay?
How did I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
How did tariffs turn out? We heard about them and then we didn't hear much about it again. In retrospect, what do you think?
Yeah, it's because they didn't do what the Democrats thought they would do. Look, the countries that are getting tariffed the most are mercantilist countries. Okay, so they market share is all they care about, and so they're going to eat it, and they have been eating it. I think it's north of 70% of all tariffs have been eaten by the manufacturer. Okay. And so and then domestically, the domestic companies that are overseas, they're eating it. So you can see their margins falling. And so you have a situation where the American people are still financially very fragile. And so they're not going to buy if prices go up. See, people get confused what inflation is. Inflation isn't rising prices. Inflation is rising money supply multiplied by the velocity, how fast that money's turning in the economy. Well, Jerome Powell's been tightening, okay, and velocity has been falling. People don't have access to credit, and so they're not buying stuff. Look at McDonald's. McDonald's is going to lower prices on their food because they were trying to jam up margins, right? And nobody's buying their stuff. So, I can raise my prices all day long, but at some point people say, well, I don't need it. And remember this thing called substitution, right? Hey, beef prices are out of control. Well, beef prices are baked into the inflation thing. Well, people aren't buying beef. So, so there's a, it's simplistic to think that people are just going to absorb higher prices. People will just defer. Just like it works the other way around. If you truly believe, that prices are going to fall, you wait till they fall more, right? If prices are rising and you can't earn you can't earn through it, you just don't buy it, or you front run and then don't buy things forever. And I think that's what's happening here. So, so tariffs are Mox Nix. In fact, it's given Trump probably close to $750 billion. I think it's going to be the year thing. But we talked about this before. He has another ace up his sleeve. He can reprice the price of gold on the books, and it gives him another probably $750 billion into the Treasury. As a memo item, they can turn right around and eliminate the three-quarters of treasury debt, or he can turn around and buy, three-quarters of $1 trillion worth of Bitcoin, or whatever, or he can do a combination. And so he's going to create an environment where he's going to make it look like the deficit's falling. And, with Doji, tariffs, and price of gold, he can probably cut the deficit in half or three-quarters next year.
What do you think of Bessent? How's he doing?
Oh, he's the genius behind Trump. So, I think Trump this time learned a lot about himself, and he has to surround himself by people he trusts. Look, he trusts Vance. He didn't trust, the
Pence.
other guy.
Pence.
What's that?
Pence.
Yeah, Mike Pence. Yeah.
The other guy. That's it right there. Now, I got to ask you a question, which is nothing to do with anything, but maybe you can help me. I am fascinated by how sometimes Wall Street doesn't make any sense. Recently, there is our beloved, those of us who are in the South, we had this thing called Cracker Barrel. Cracker Barrel was this thing that everybody went to, and it was just homespun and corny, whatever. We're seeing the second version of this ESG, not DEI, but ESG coming in, where in order to satisfy the BlackRocks and the Vanguards, you have to put somebody in there to basically destroy this venerable, institution. We saw with Bud Light, or now we see this. Is that anything to even concern? Is that ESG, Wall Street? Is that anything of any note, or is that just a random case here and there? Does this lunacy still exist?
No, I think you're getting massive reversals. I mean, I don't really understand. I mean, Cracker Barrels, their demographic are people that would puke up ESG. So
yes.
I'm not really sure. I just caught wind of it this week. People making a big deal about they're changing the brand image, but I understand that. So they're getting rid of the old guy on a Cracker Barrel, right? So, but basically they're making it more neutral because they may want to pivot. Now, I don't know any of her other policies, or I don't know her personally,
okay.
But if she pushes it beyond that, then I think people just won't eat there. There's too many choices out there now.
Well, see, that's what you said before about beef, and it's like the old joke: my dog doesn't eat meat. Why? I don't give it meat. That kind of thing. So there's other places. I don't want to spend too much time in it because I always think that this is the civilian speaking versus the Wall Street insider.
Now, I think these people never stop. I tell people all the time. I said communists never give up. They just go back into the shadows until they can come back out again. I mean, it is literally a mental illness, and these people are they're relentless.
Well, let me tell you something. Here I am in New York City. We have again. I don't want to make this too political. We have a guy coming up who, put it this way, even the communists have rejected as like for being too extreme. So that's something else. Anyway, from an investment point of view, tradewithlionel.com. This is great, and I think this is fantastic. But let me explain to you why Bob Kudla is so important. You don't invest upon what you like. You like Trump or MAGA. It's whatever the situation gives you, good, bad, or indifferent, you pivot. There's always a deal. There's always profit, no matter what happens. If it goes up or goes down, you react accordingly. Explain that.
Yeah, there's always a bull market somewhere. I try to explain to people, look, in the Great Depression, if you'd have just bought the gold mine or homestake mines, you'd be like, what depression? Okay. Mm-hmm. And it went up the whole time. And if you look at like what happened in 73 and 74, if you just bought oil, and gold, you were rich. In 2000 and in 2000, tech collapsed and oil and uranium shot up. 2008, we had the great financial crisis. TLT went up 45% when the market went down 45%. So you're going to have the same thing in this situation. So what the thing you have to kind of understand is the why. So for me, it's going to be either TLT with going to the bond market, or if the market is not buying that notion, then you're going to see gold miners, silver miners, Bitcoin, and oil go up. And right now we're getting both. We're getting TLTs moving higher, and we're getting gold and silver moving higher, and then oil, Trump has a mission to kind of drive the price down on that, but energy's been holding up really well. It's my largest position forever, just because of the cash it flows off, and so I've been doing just fine with it. It doesn't move much, but it throws off a lot of cash the way I trade it, and at the end of the day, all that matters is how much cash you can generate from your investment. So that's what I see. That's what I'm looking at going forward. Either we're going to get financial repression, okay, which means that inflation is rising higher than the cost of money, and so they're basically suppressing interest rates, and then gold and silver and Bitcoin and even oil will like that. Or we get a full on recession, and TLT loves that. So those are the binaries for me, and I'll probably do a combination of both. But tech is dead. What I mean dead is that it went ahead and probably burned itself out again, and has to retrench. The level of price to earnings is just absurd. I love Palantir in terms of its growth prospects, but not at 100 times sales. Think about that. If I told you had to use your personal money to buy Palantir, you'd be like, oh, no problem, Bob. No. You're going to buy it private. And the only way you're going to get your cash out is the cash it generates. Well, your grandchildren would be dead before it would generate enough cash to pay back your investment. The only reason why it's flying now, it's a public market, and it's a game of hot potato. And so we've seen this movie many, many, many times. And people are going to learn to speak French, because a lot of these stocks are going to Eiffel Tower down. Meaning is that the angle it went up is the angle it comes down. And so that's why and that's tech. I mean, it's out of control. Nvidia out of control. Palantir out of control. Facebook out of Meta. Facebook is that they're playing games on their balance sheet, in terms of making their earnings look stronger than it is, because they're underreporting their depreciation expenses. All this stuff starts coming out when the stock price starts falling. Now, is it technically illegal? No. Is it deceptive? Absolutely. And so those guys will get sued, by saying, you put 11-year depreciation expense on chips that are probably going to be obsolete in 3 years, And so instead of you expensing those and making your earnings look worse, you don't. And so you make it look like you beat earnings. Well, all of a sudden, in 6 months from now, Meta is going to take this massive charge off, right, to hide everything in one shot after the stock's already down 40%. So you're going to see a lot of that stuff. A lot of games get played with that. Nvidia plays hide the salami, with the moving stuff to their subsidiary, customers. You look at SMCI, they just basically stacked the books. That blew up. So, there's a lot of games like that being played. So,
well, it's very rare that you have somebody who can artfully throw in the term "hide the salami," and
I did it without laughing.
only you, my friend. Now let's get on to brass tacks. Somebody's listening right now and they say, I love this guy, Bob Kudla, and I want to be a part of this. And I don't know what the hell he's selling. I don't know what tradewithlionel.com is. What do I do? How do I make money? He knows what the hell he's talking about. What does somebody do right now, Bob?
Yeah, so we've created a couple of very effective algorithms that help people, look for buy signals in the stock market. And so what we do is that we provide them access to that algorithm. But more importantly, we also throw trades out every day, and we put our records out there so people can see how well we do, and then we also teach you how to trade, and we have chat rooms and trading rooms. Like this whole market's been crazy the last couple of weeks, and if I look at my thing here, if you bear with me 1 second, is that over the last the last 10 trades we've done here, we're up 12 out of the last 15 trades were green. And that's typically our average is 66.43% winning trades. and our annualized is 76.28%. And so, and we've been doing this a long time. These aren't hokey trades. These are brand
No.
names that you would recognize, and so we don't play the penny stock game, and we rarely day trade. Mostly our trades are 2 or 3 days long, and it's a really good system. We developed it for ourselves personally, and then somebody suggested I should go out and sell it, and that's what I did, and that's why Trade Genius was formed. But you like it, you like the group. We're all like-minded people, so it's a fun environment. You could be in a voice room, or you could be just in a chat room. It's up
See,
to
that's it. You make your money. You tell people you don't make money in trades. You make money in selling people information. You're not a broker. It's not your thing. You tell people what you're doing. That's the thing. Unlike a lot of people on CNBC, I don't want to bring that up. You're saying, I'm not pushing a stock. This is how you can be a part of it. And whatever your entry level is, if you're an experienced trader, if you're brand new, if you don't know anything, you can jump in, and it's fun, it's productive, but you're in charge. You sell people the tools, the methodology, the smarts. You decide. That tells me everything. You're not pushing this. You're saying, and also, this is what I'm doing, complete transparency, and you can talk to people, fellow travelers, so to speak, fellow traders, those who are involved at any level there is. And that's the most important. And that's why people who have told me, who have thanked me for turning them on to you, Bob. And it's Trade with Lionel. Now, if for some reason you're old-fashioned, I think you should get away from this, and you call 800-949-1408. Tell them that you saw Bob and Lionel speak, and you've got deals aplenty, specials to lure, to entice. Again, to teach you, not to sell you some stock, but to teach you how to enjoy this incredible, this, I think, very profitable, not roller coaster, but amusement park called investing. That about says it, I think.
Yeah, and I think we do find in all markets, but what we find is that when things are going well, people say, "Oh, I don't really need anybody," but when things go haywire, then people find out our true value. And we're not myopic at all. I mean, I'm not a cheerleader. I'm not a Bitcoin cheerleader. I'm not a gold cheerleader. I'm a making money cheerleader. And if I think Bitcoin's going to fall, I tell people it's going to fall. I don't care if I hurt people's feelings.
Right, exactly.
Fall, I tell people I think it's going to fall. Oil, I'm heavily invested in energy. But if I think it's going to fall, I tell people it's going to fall. And vice versa. And what we charge for service is nothing compared to what you get out of it. It's nothing, peanuts. And we make enough money, we do well, and look, I'm trading alongside you. Probably 80% of the trades I put out there for you guys, in the room, I'm taking personally. So I can't take them all. I just have to put trades out every day, for people because that's a service. But I'm trading right alongside you guys. So we're aligned.
Well, Bob Kudla, it's Trade with Lionel. Remember, Trade Genius is your company, but Trade with Lionel is how you help us and how you get the deals that have been specially crafted and tailored for us and the Lionel Nation listenership. Or call 800-949-1408, 800-949-1408. And Bob, it's always a pleasure. I learned so much. You will say something, you will pull something one day, you'll say, helium is helium. I didn't know there's a I'm just making that up. Cardboard is looking where cardboard is. Where does he come up with this? Cardboard, helium, kryptonite. They have that in any event. Bob Kudla, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so very much. Thanks for your genius, and thank you for your friendship, and thanks for your clarity. And I appreciate it as always, dear friend.
No, thank you. In fact, there is a publicly traded helium company. We could talk about that some other time.
I just made that up. If you've got it, who knows? I was going to say something, but after hide the salami, I'll let that just go. Anyway, Bob Kudla, thank you, my dear friend.
I'll see you. Bye-bye.
Indeed.